Yeah.
Someone name a card. Name your favorite card.
Queen.
Ace.
Queen of what? I heard queen first. Queen of what?
Hearts.
What?
Oh, snap. How did he do that?
All right.
Oh, my.
So now let's begin.
Oh, my gosh. Welcome to the Now podcast, Making Moves in Real Estate, episode 21.
Yeah.
Today, we're having a conversation with a differentiation expert. In fact, he is the man who helped Simon Sinek find his why. Just a few highlights of this guest's career include working with major organizations like Amazon, American Express, UPS, way more, too many to list. Also, he's advised government bodies, including the White House and the United Nations. He's been inducted into the $1 Million Consulting Mentor Hall of Fame, written 5 books, one of which is the bestseller Accidental Genius, translated into not 10, but 11 languages.
Right.
Delivered keynotes to audiences of up to 3,000 people, podcaster, blogger, and magician.
Right.
Please, let's give a shout out to Mr. Mark Levy.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me on, Michelle and Courtney. I really appreciate it.
We got really lucky getting you on here with us.
Yeah.
You sound like you must be very busy.
I am. As you saw, right before this call, I had to push all my calls back and whatnot. So, yeah, I do a lot of stuff. I always do too much.
Mm,
So, yeah.
I can relate to
know
that.
nothing about that.
Right. Exactly.
Tell us about how you got connected with Simon Sinek. That's I want to hear all about that.
Oh, well, I'll tell you briefly. I'd rather talk about like ideas around how to differentiate rather than talking about specific clients.
Yeah.
With Simon, though, like 15, 16 years ago, I was at a Fortune Small Business Conference or an Inc. 5000. I don't remember but it was at the Javits Center in New York City. And there was a big hall. It was lunchtime, and everyone was excitedly talking because we had just seen Jim Collins speak on stage and Patrick Lencioni speak on stage and all these people. And I sat next to this one gentleman because there was a seat open next to him. And I said, "Hi, my name's Mark Levy. What's yours?" And he said, "Simon Sinek." And I said, remember, he was not known at the time. And Simon said, "What do you do, Mark?" And I told him what it is I do. And I said, "What do you do, Simon?" And he told me that he was in advertising and he was looking to make a change in things. And so we worked together. I'm condensing the story just for, confidentiality reasons. But like it was while working together, he start with why and all those things, So anyway, great guy, super brilliant guy.
I have heard him speak. He is brilliant. It's like I can almost keep up with him.
Right, exactly.
So I can hardly, that's a big word, differentiation expert.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I used to, when I started my business 20 odd years ago, I used to call myself a positioning consultant. And so positioning in business, because I know business strategy, I know all variations of business strategy. I even consulted to the former head of the strategy unit of the Harvard Business School. So you got to know your stuff to keep up on that. But then I really, many years ago, maybe 12 years ago or so, I really said, what I really am is a differentiation expert. So what I am is that I understand how to make people stand out in dramatic ways and ways that gets the marketplace talking. So yes, I am positioning, but the thing that I do best is differentiation. So let's not pretend that I do everything well. It's just how to stand out and how to talk about what it is that you're standing out around and write about it and so forth, and how to get it out in the world. That's what it is that I help people with predominantly. And also, by the way, it helped that when I was creating the idea of differentiation expert, it was not a thing. Like the concept of differentiation has been around for decades and decades and decades, but it was not a term that anyone was using particularly. So I got all the URLs like that.
Right.
So to me, it's always great to be able to distinguish yourself around a category that sounds fresh to people, but that they instantly understand. I'm not a big fan of when people try to differentiate their business. They often come up with a category that like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I don't want to know what it is. And as a matter of fact, I want to leave the conversation because like, why are you keeping information away from me? You know what I mean? Like I'm a big believer on I was coaching a sales force earlier this week. And a guy was telling me this was for a trade show. A guy was telling me how he likes to open by asking someone a question that's related to the products and so forth and whatnot. And I said, if I was walking a trade show and you asked me that question, the very first thing I do would be taking a step away from you. And I might answer it while I'm walking away, because to me, if I say, oh, what is it you do? And you start to ask me a question, to me, you're overtly techniquing me. Like you're overtly applying sales strategy to me. And I feel that I'm no longer human to you, that I'm just an impediment to get around, and you're going to try to box me into a corner or so forth. Like treat me like a human being and I might want to talk to you, but otherwise don't. Right?
So with us being real estate and most of our listeners being realtors, differentiating yourself. So there's millions of realtors.
Right.
And I think like authenticity is probably like a hot word for us in our industry here. What are some suggestions that you have?
Well, for realtors, I've not thought about this. But well, and I know you guys are realtors, but it's more, that I talked to Courtney and she's so cool. And now I know Michelle is super cool. That's it. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to play. So one thing that realtors can do, there's lots of different ways to stand out and to differentiate yourself. But one of them is about your backstory, about why the work you do is important to you, why the work you do is what it is you were born to do, or that if you weren't born to do it, it's come to mean so much to you that it means more to you than just as a means of making money. So I'll give you an example. It's not a realtor example because I've never differentiated a realtor. I mean, I could do it, I'm sure, very easily. But I'll pick from like a small business thing that might be applicable. So last year, I had a young man come out. He's in his probably early 30s. And he came out and I wanted a whole house generator. Now, I live in a historically protected stone farmhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Stone farmhouse, stone barn. I'm on a farm. And so it was very important to me that the generator not be visible because it would ruin the 18th century feel of things. So we're walking around the property, and as we're looking for a place to run this generator, he said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "No. What business are you in?" And I said, "Differentiation, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Can I ask you another question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I'm starting a side hustle. Can I get your opinion on it?" I said, "Sure." And he said, this generator business, my father started it decades ago, and I'm now working with him. But I want to start a side business selling hops to microbreweries, for them to brew their beer. And I said, "Why are you, and I said, "Why would someone buy your hops over someone else's hops?" Now, this is totally with real estate as well.
Right.
I said, "Why would," and he said, "Oh, our hops taste better." And I said, "That's a terrible answer." I said, "Bad answer. No one's going to believe you. It doesn't matter. People don't even know what hops taste like. Like, forget it. It's not going to work." And so I said, why did you want to start this business? And so he said, oh, well, I have a 4-year-old daughter and we live on a farm and it's like 300 acres. And even though our main business now is this business, this, putting in the houses, the technology, for decades and decades, my family were farmers. Like my father was a farmer at first. His father was a farmer, right? So we've had this forever. And I wanted my daughter to know where she came from. So I thought that if we grew hops on my farm, I could do it with my daughter and she would know where we came from. And also, I don't get a lot of time to spend with my daughter. She's always on her little computer and things like this. So I thought that by working on growing the hops together, it would create daddy-daughter time and show her where she came from. And I said, okay, that's your differentiation. And he said, what do you mean? I said, so microbreweries, a lot of them, they're family owned. They care about the community. They care deeply about these things. So forget about your hops tasting better. No one cares about that. It's this idea of in your flyers or when you go around from microbrewery to microbrewery, like you need to talk about, like, I started this business to teach my daughter, like, where we grew up farmers. And it was extra daddy. And by the way, he threw in extra details like I dug 100-foot trench and then my daughter and I put the seeds in. My 4-year-old daughter went up and down the trench putting the seeds in, and she'd come out with her watering can, her pink watering can, and she'd water it. And I said, that's what you tell people. And that's it. Anyway, that's the whole story. I don't know whatever happened. He wasn't a client of mine or what. I didn't ask. But that would be an example of leading with your backstory as a means of showing people why it's important to do, like why the work you do is not just a sideline, right? You want to show that, and I may have said this to you, Courtney, on a previous call. You want to show people that you're an apple tree growing apples, that what it is that you're doing in life is what you were put on earth to do. If you saw an apple tree growing apples, you would probably want one of those apples. You'd say, oh my God, they look delicious. They're shiny. They're probably sweet. I want one of those because I want to be a part of the story where something that it was put on earth to do is doing it. Like it's probably super cool. Whereas if you saw an apple tree that wasn't growing any apples at all, but instead it was growing oranges, you'd say, that's disgusting. Like how artificial. I bet you like the farmer grafted those on because maybe he could make more money or he injected something into the tree, whatever it is. I don't want that because it's not here for the right reasons. So I don't trust those things. Right. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I met Mark through Eric Palmier, and
yes, love Eric.
Eric, he's great. He's writing a book, and I got to help with a little bit of his content. Now, do you work with many clients on writing books? Is that like your primary way that you consult these days? Or
I wouldn't say no. My primary way is about helping people differentiate and their messaging, but those ideas fit in to lots of different things. So in writing a book, I teach people the name of my talk, because I'm also a public speaker. Could you tell?
Yes.
The name of my talk is How to Write the Best Book You'll Ever Write. And so I have a bunch of ideas. Shall I share?
Yes, you shall.
What are we on, a podcast or something? All right. So when people want to write a book, so people out there might want to write a book. Invariably, I ask them, what book do you want to write? And 99% of the time, they start to talk about the marketplace. They say, oh, what kind of book do I want to write? Well, here's who my market is. Here's what my market's reading. Here's how I think I could stand out as a guru in my marketplace's eyes. So it's always about the outsider. And so books need readers. So thinking about your market ahead of time is great. And businesses need clients. So thinking about your marketplace ahead of time, wonderful. But if you think about your marketplace first, you're going to corrupt yourself and your book for many different reasons. not the least of which is this, that the marketplace only knows what the marketplace has already seen. That right, because they don't know your work. They don't know all the stuff that you know. They haven't lived your life. They're not an expert like you are. So what it is that they're going to tell you should be in your book is going to be based on what other people have written, like other things that they've read about or so. So instantly you're dumbing down your role in writing the book. You're becoming commoditized right away. So you want to think about the marketplace, but not first. The first place that you need to think about is for yourself. I believe that a book is a unit of meaning, that you're bringing meaning into the world that doesn't exist yet. So you get to be the one to decide what that book's about and what it is. Like above anything else, it should be something that you're going to be really proud of, but also more along the lines that I think that your book should be a growth tool for you, that it should help you stretch. Mark Bowden, the guy who wrote Black Hawk Down, the reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he said that a writer should always be working on the most ambitious thing that they've ever done. So there's a great reason for that. That is, if what you write about is boring to you, your boredom will show through to the reader and they'll be bored. Whereas if what you're writing about is exciting to you and allows you to stretch and grow and surprises you, the reader will see that in the writing and they will be surprised and excited while they're reading your book. Robert Frost, the great New England poet, said, "No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader." So if you're just sitting writing what you know, your book is doomed. No one's going to want to read it. It's going to be a snooze fest. So you need to write something that you want to write that's important to you. You get to dictate what the meaning is. So that's just one idea from talking about this stuff in writing a book. It's like, what's the book that you have to write? And by the way, sometimes I will write books. I'll write many, many pages of a book and then throw that away, because sometimes you don't know if what you're writing should be a book until you're into it. So when I sit there writing books or so, or writing anything, I'm very fast and loose with it. A guy who I interviewed for Accidental Genius, that book back there on writing, Jeff Bellman. Jeff, I once asked him, I said, because he does that too. Jeff told me, he said, I write 100 pages of a book. And then I think they may be double spaced, so it might be 50 pages, but it's 100 pages. He said 100 pages. He said he writes 100 pages of a book, and then he prints it out and looks at it and sees if it warrants being a book. Is there something there people need to know? Is there things surprising? And I said to him, have you done that more than once? He said, I've done that many times. And I said, have you ever thrown the 100 pages out? He said, oh, sure, all the time. So what it is like, don't sit down and think that you need to commit an act of literature in giant letters. It's more like you need to see if you have anything interesting to say about your subject. And I know you do. And I'm not just saying to you two guys, but you do, but can you get to that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's the same for differentiation as well, right? You have to stretch yourself and have something exciting to say, or no one will want to hear your story.
Right. Seth Godin, the great marketer, Seth Godin said something like, all the boring spots are taken. Mm-hmm. So you are going to have to, right, you're going to have to be interesting. Yes. Like you have no other option. When people try to differentiate, one of the reasons why differentiating your business rarely works for companies or for people, or it doesn't work to the degree it should, is that they say they want to differentiate, but they're not really committed to what that means. And I tell them, if you differentiate properly, you're going to stand out. And understand, when you stand out, it doesn't mean that 100% of the people are going to love you for standing out, or 100%. Like, just be aware that it's an important tool and kind of an essential tool these days, but it doesn't mean universal acceptance. So you have to be ready for that. Otherwise, you're going to dumb down how you stand out, and now you're not really standing out anymore.
Whoa.
I can see that. It's not always the right move to do a wide net, essentially, is what you're saying. You need to find who your people are that you're trying to attract, I guess.
So let me tell you a story about that.
Okay.
I have a story for everything. Don't say anything, because otherwise I'll say, I'm going to tell you a story. So you said you have to find who your people are. So years ago, the guy, Dr. Rick Warren, who wrote Purpose Driven Church, Purpose Driven Leader, he wrote all these purpose driven books. They've sold millions of copies. So he had a marketer who worked with him named Greg Stielstra. And in one of his books, Stielstra said, and I'm paraphrasing him, he did not say it to this extent that I'm about to, but I'm a ham, so I'm going to talk about it at length. He said, I hate mushrooms. Mushrooms are slimy, they're rubbery, they're disgusting, they're a fungus. They're definitionally a fungus. The mere thought of putting a mushroom in my mouth and chewing on it makes me want to retch. I hate mushrooms. And then he said, but there are people who love mushrooms for the very same reasons that I hate mushrooms. So the way for you to sell more mushrooms, if you grow and market mushrooms, is not to make a hybrid mushroom and dumb down all the qualities that make the mushroom a mushroom in the hopes of selling it to me. Because I hate mushrooms. I don't care what it is you do to them. If you call it a mushroom, I'm not going to eat it. You want to take your mushroom in all the things that I find repulsive about it, and you want to lead with those things, and you want to sell mushrooms to mushroom lovers. Don't distort your product to sell it to haters, because they're going to hate it, right? If they don't care what you do to it, they're going to hate it. So you find the love. And Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead said something similar. Jerry Garcia said the Grateful Dead are a lot like licorice. Most people hate licorice, but the people who love licorice really love licorice. So anyway, yes, your point of differentiation, you unabashedly lead with it. You don't back down from it. Like, that's what it is.
That's great.
Yeah.
So great.
Thank you.
Well, I think too, especially when if it's a tough market or someone's struggling, I feel like people will tend to try to do the opposite and just get whatever they can or whatever business when you're in sales. So if you can just stick to your guns and follow Mr. Mark Levy's advice, you'll be better in the long run.
Right. That's true. With their differentiation, they get too wide and amorphous and unfocused. I will say, this is not strict differentiation talk, but to me, your differentiation is your umbrella idea. It's your governing idea. It's the thing that you symbolize in the marketplace. Now, that said, you can do other things out in the world, but it's always under that umbrella. You have to make sure that whatever you do coheres to what it is you say you are. Or does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, you don't want to do anything people call being off-brand or so.
Right.
Like, you can do lots of stuff. It's just, it's got to seem too organic. Like, I'll give you the perfect non-organic thing. I actually still have this downstairs. I bought this like 10 years ago from a drugstore. I so loved it that I was in the dollar aisle of a drugstore, and I wanted to get furniture polish, and there was a can of furniture polish from Brillo. I swear everyone knows Brillo. Steel wool, like you use it on pots to get off stuff that you can't get off, and you scratch that, I mean, it's very powerful stuff. If you're not careful, you can scratch the hell out. So furniture polish for Brillo is a bad idea. From a branding standpoint. For all I know, it was a great idea from a business dev standpoint. But like, because it doesn't make sense. Brillo is tough. It's steel wool. It cleans stuff that's uncleanable, like with a lot of grit and grease. It's not an elegant thing. You would never think of rubbing Brillo on your antique furniture. So that's what, you know what I mean? That would be an example. You don't want to do, you have to make sure that what you do coheres to what it is that you're about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Your values, your core values.
Yes. Exactly. What else? Have you changed the world yet?
Yeah. You have.
Well, I definitely took a bunch of notes, and you're giving me some homework. I'm what, less than 8 months into my own business, so I got work to do.
That's cool. What idea stood out for you most, if I can ask?
I mean, I think I got to get I got to get down to my why. I think there's a component of confidence that you have to utilize to surround whatever that is, because if you don't, then you're just not going to move. I feel like I can work on this differentiation in my why, but if I don't believe in it, then it's not going to go anywhere.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. It's got to come from a real place. Otherwise, you know, you'll be caught out on it. You know, like people call you on it. It's, you know, you're going to look bad. So it's got to come from an honest place. You know,
Courtney will tell you. She always says all these things about me, and I'm like, you know. So it's a work in progress. It's like I was top 1% in the world, and she's always like, "You're top 1% in the world." I'm like, "Yeah, but you know, there's that."
Right.
But who cares? I don't care about that.
Right. There you go. And how about for you, Courtney? What's the thing that you're taking away that one of the
I would say that I've worked on this concept with coaches in the past, but things have changed in my life and my business. And so I'm needing to revisit it. Right. I think that I'm different than I was 5 years ago even. And so it's like, okay, what's the new me and what's my real vision here, whether it's for my production business or trying to grow our organization with like-minded realtors. So it's almost like I have two different differentiation factors that I'm trying to elevate right now.
Right. And it's okay to change. I mean, especially after 5 years, it's like people get it, you know. Anyway, I hope this was a help.
It was. Thank you, Mark. So where can people find you?
So my website is levyinnovation.com. That's Levy, and then the word innovation without an S. I'm only capable of one innovation. Levyinnovation.com. And my email's there and everything. It's Mark with a K at levyinnovation.com. And if you Google me, you know, there are speeches and videos and podcasts and things that I'm on.
Can I ask you one more quick question?
Yes, please.
Do you have children?
I do not.
Okay. I was thinking like, you would be such a fun dad. Or nieces and nephews, or, oh my gosh, you'd be cool to hang out with as an adult, but man, as a kid.
I appreciate it. I have the immaturity of a 4-year-old, but I don't have it.
But brilliant.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Anyway.
Thank you, Mark, for taking time. You know how busy you are, and hopefully I'll get to come across you again, whether it's with Eric or elsewhere, or New York at the Magic Show.
Exactly, that's right.
I was like, that's on my list. That's not the wicked thing in New York, so.
Right, right. Now chamber magic. Anyway, thank you both, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.